And we are going to begin the presentation on systems and processes. So it's June. We're in the Hothouse group, which is the resource hub for professional residential interior designers, based on Facebook. It's completely free. And it's where you can link into these various webinars. And in fact, I'm going to put some resources from today's webinar up there as well under the files tab. So check out under the files tab there in the Facebook group, because there are resources that have been put there to associate with other webinars that have run in the past. This this was advertised as being the first of two webinars. So we're doing systems and processes in two halves. First half today, chronologically, first half of the design process, second half in 2 weeks' time, Wednesday, the 24th of June, again at 10 a.m., again will be recorded. Now, since I advertised that, I've done quite a lot of work on procurement, and it has occurred to me that procurement is just so big. I actually want to separate it out, and I'm going to run a third webinar in early July, which is just going to be about procurement. So we're going to take procurement out of the systems and processes, and we're going to look at the systems and processes of procurement specifically in July. So we won't be touching that today or in 2 weeks' time. So I am going to share a presentation, I hope. And Virginie, could you give me a thumbs up if you can see that presentation? That's brilliant. Thank you very much. And we will crack on. So we are in Systems and Processes Part 1. What we are going to be covering today, brief introduction. I want to talk to you about something that I call the intent framework. And I think this is something that tends to be missing from everybody's systems and processes, and actually really is the whole point. So we're going to be looking at the intent framework. We're going to be looking then at systems and processes, and that is going to be based on a chronological timeline of the design process. So we're going to be following the design process from pre-engagement, before you even have met your client, right the way through the design process until the point of handover and beyond. So two halves, first half today. As I was putting this together, today we are going to be looking at the point at which you produce your fee proposal. And something's been coming up in my conversations with designers lately to do with fee proposals that sort of ties into systems and processes. And I know that the market is tricky, and this seems to me to be a relevant point for designers in a tricky market to do with systems and processes and fee proposals. So I have popped it in here. So it's like a little bit extra, but it is related. So we're going to be looking at what I call the fee proposal fork. And then I want to talk to you about a new program I'm going to be running, which is the White Label Studio, very briefly, and then we'll have Q&A. So that's today's agenda. So when I set, this is part of a series that we're running in Hothouse, and it springs from what I call the pillars of design entrepreneurship. And we've been looking at them in turn. So we were thinking about marketing and sales and client acquisition and design, founder presence and business planning. We've done all of that this year. And then later this year, we're going to come back and look at the financial side. We're going to be looking actually at design excellence and the client user experience. So all of that is yet to come. And in the middle, I popped systems and processes. And I thought, oh God, this is going to be a bit dull. But I've got really down into the nitty-gritty of it, and I've realized how integrated it is with all of the other aspects of your business performance. You know, your whole sales strategy should manifest through your systems and processes. You know, your marketing should manifest through your systems and processes. It's not just a batch of documents or, you know, a workflow. It is utterly integrated with the success of your business, your client conversion, your client satisfaction, and the delivery of an excellent product. So your systems aren't your back office, they're actually your business. So they are super important. So as I was putting all of this together, I was thinking, hang on a minute, let's not just get into make a document, make a document, make a document. Let's think about why, what is the purpose of this document in this moment? How is it going to hit the client? What does it need to be? What purpose does it need to serve at this exact precise moment of the design process? So I developed something that I'm calling the intent framework. It's like the purpose of the stuff that you're doing. Every client communication is doing something. The question is, are you being intentional? So we're going to look at being intentional. Now, I had some fun thinking about the emotional ups and downs the client goes through in a project. And we all recognize this. Clients are not, they don't sit in a neutral condition having stuff done to them. They have moods, they have emotions, they're under stress. And to some extent, when you've done it a few times, we all know where those highs and lows tend to drop in. So I had a little bit of fun making a chart that charts across the various points of the design process. You can see them across the bottom from pre-engagement all the way through to post-project. And we can sort of anticipate how our clients are going to be feeling in a sort of unmanaged state at any point going across through the design process. And the point of this way of thinking about systems and processes is to make sure that the stuff we are doing with the client is aware of how we're likely to be finding the client at the point that we're going to be doing this thing with them. So, what is this communication trying to do to the client's state, to their knowledge, their emotions, their behavior, or to the legal and commercial record? What is the point? What is the intention or the purpose of our process at this moment in time? And I've broken it down into 4 intentions, 4 purposes. The first of these is persuade. So quite a lot of our documentation is trying to sell. It's trying to persuade, reassure, encourage the client to take action. And so the persuasion, if we're persuading as part of a document, we're acting on the client's desire and pushing them to a decision. The second intention is anchor. An anchor is a facet of documentation that actually acts on the record. So these are the points on paper where we can bring our client's attention to our terms and conditions or to the price of something or to an agreement that we've made. These are the things we're going to rely on in court in the event that we have to, prove that we were transparent or clear in the way that we described our services. Our third intention is to inform, because quite often we find ourselves in trouble with our clients simply because they haven't understood. They haven't understood because they haven't been prepared by us in order to, make them ready for something. And so information is super important and can be a priority within a pack of documentation. And then finally, we have manage. And manage is actually, I do a lot of presentations in my courses on how to manage your clients. And a big part of good client management comes through our systems and processes and the way that we compile our documentation in order to be most supportive, most informative to our clients. Now, manage is so important that I've actually broken it down into 4 subsets. And the first of these is managing our clients' expectations. So making sure that, we've got them on an even keel in terms of what they think is going to happen next, that they're well informed, that they understand the process, the costs, the timelines, and what their roles and responsibilities are going to be within a project. Something I wrote about recently, you'll find it on my blog, is change management. And I wrote a blog post that was called something like Your Client Hates the Sofa, but They Don't Really. And this is about the shock of finding yourself in an unfamiliar environment and thinking that you don't like it. But actually, it's not about taste or, whether it's pleasing, it's the fact that it's different. So, change management, managing our clients, navigating their emotional and practical disruption is another important element, another important intention of our documentation. Managing their decision-making process, making sure that they feel confident, that they're held stable, and that the decision making is timely, is captured and contained within the ideal time frame for that decision. And then finally, an enormous part of management is managing the relationship. And on this emotional graph that I have, this non-scientific emotional graph, there's a whole sort of deep dive that we take as we go onto site and nothing is happening and everything is expensive and the money is leaking out and yet there's nothing to see. And we know that this is a very difficult point in the process of delivering the interior design process. And so managing our client relationships, the trust, the rapport, their psychological safety, another key intention. So when we look back at this graph of the client's roller coaster emotional journey from pre-discovery right the way through to handover, we see that the blue dots are points at which we are presenting our clients with different documents, with different packs, with different presentations. And we see that if we overlay, in terms of timing, the arrival of these packs on top of the client's emotional state at the time, we can begin to get some direction on how that pack should perform in order to try to help the client, to help us and the client have the smoothest collaborative journey through this process. So the emotional arc and what I have identified as the 9 key client-facing sort of presentation pack delivery points, we can see that we really need to be mindful of how the client is feeling at that point. So when I think about these very important presentation packs, and we'll look at them, that your client is going to receive from you at different stages of the process, I think of them as each one of them as being like a member of staff. And you have selected that member of staff for their very particular qualities. Maybe one of them is very calm, but very clear. Maybe another one is much more excitable, much more flamboyant, much more creative. And you have selected that member of staff to be that representative who engages with the client at that point in time. So we are creating these packs in order to serve that purpose in that moment. So when I talk about the intent framework, and we're going to look at the process in a second, I'm talking about a sort of an intelligent approach to designing systems and processes from first principles, not on the hoof, not organically, not based on something that we've done before, but from first principles in order to perform optimally at that very particular point in the process. So each document, each presentation has one primary intent. It's got a primary role. It might have some secondary roles, but it has one primary intent. So a document can serve more than one intent, but its primary purpose will sit cleanly in one category. If you can't name the primary intent before you design the document, it may not completely serve its function. So I've taken an example here of the concept presentation. We're going to go through the whole thing, well, half the thing. The concept presentation, the P here is not for persuade, it's for primary. So the primary intent of the concept presentation is to persuade the client, to win their emotional commitment to a design direction. The secondary intents of the concept presentation are to manage the client through change and to manage them to a decision, because we want them to say yes. We want to structure the reveal to deliver a clear yes. So these are our purposes that we have in mind when we produce our concept presentation. So your systems and processes are not your back office. They are actually the spine, the backbone, the heart of your business. Now, I'm going to try something right now, which is going to be a little bit challenging. I'm going to stop sharing this temporarily. I hope I can get back to it. And I'm going to try and share a Chrome window. So, Virginie, could you give me a thumbs up if you're seeing a scrolling Chrome window? Okay, so this is the model that I've been working from. It's the client journey through your business, and it is based on REBA or the BIID stages of work. So we have at the bottom pre-engagement, discovery, feasibility and appointment, prep and briefing, concept design, develop design, technical design, build, completion and snagging, and then handover and aftercare. So all of these different stages have been broken down incrementally into all of their parts, and I'm going to take you through each of them. Now, I said today we're only doing half of them, and in fact, there's another line running through this. This is the green line down at the bottom here, and this green line is the whole procurement process, which I'm going to break out into a third webinar. So we're going to be looking at procurement separately. So this is the model that we're going to be working from, and I'm going to stop sharing that now and take you back so that we can look at it more clearly in a static form. So here we go. Okay, so this is just a screenshot of the model that I was previously looking at. And here's how the model works. There's a line, a horizon that runs across it. Everything above the line is client facing. Okay, so we have the stage of the design process. We have a horizon running across, and everything above that horizon, the client sees. Everything below the horizon is your business administration. Okay, so your business needs all the stuff above and all the stuff below, but it's only the stuff above that the client sees. And the whole thing is ordered across the bottom by the stages of the design process, as sort of indicated by both REBA and the BIID. So we're going to begin by thinking about pre-engagement. And this is what's going on in your business before a client even encounters you, before you have an awareness of your client. At the moment, they are a complete stranger. They're going to be coming into your life, but you don't know yet that it's about to happen. And what is going on is you have materials out in the world. So your website, your marketing materials, maybe you've got some FAQs or blogs or whatever. They are out in the world and they are doing the job of raising awareness and helping your clients understand what it is that you do and you offer. Now, it's a little bit hard to get into the detail with this because I talk about interior designers who are operating at different tiers. And I have the tiers are broken into 4 levels. And at the bottom, we have startup. Next, we have growing pains, which looks like a running business, but behind the scenes, it's all still a bit built in under construction. It's a bit sort of chaotic. Then we have tier three, which is a really good going practice, making money, well established. Um, sorry, well established. And finally, we have tier four, and tier four is our stardom. So we go from startup to stardom, tiers one, two, three, and four. Now, depending what tier you are operating at, your website is going to take a slightly different approach because at the lower end, you are going to be educating your clients, maybe giving them some expectation of what fees might be, and what services you offer and so on, because your clients at that entry level are going to be more cost conscious, probably. That's probably where you're going to start. Once you elevate, and you start fishing at a higher tier and you're pushing your business up, you probably want to get clients self-certifying. So you might keep some indication of price, but it's going to be beginning to be a bit of a barrier to the client. That indication of price is going to be a bit of a barrier because some clients will self-certify out of that process at that point. And then as we move even higher up, we probably start to reduce any information about pricing at all, because we are only looking to attract clients for whom price is not a key consideration. So it's all a bit different depending on what tier you're at. But these materials in your pre-engagement that are on your website or in your marketing are designed to attract your ideal client, and they're designed to begin the process of informing that client in order to avoid shock later. Okay, so that's what those materials are doing. Now, I have put this document in Hothouse. Oh no, I haven't. Oh my goodness, I haven't done it yet. I'm going to put this document in Hothouse immediately after today's presentation, and it's a longish spreadsheet, and it contains what I've identified as the 30 client touch points of the design process. Now, some of those touch points, they're like weekly minutes. Now, there could be 100 sets of weekly minutes, but that would be one touch point. So I've got 30 touch points, and I've broken them down according to what I think the intention should be for the performance of those particular touch points. The ones in red are the big set piece packs, the really important presentation packs where everything has to look absolutely spot on. And so all of the 30 touch points are listed, they're in this document, and they're there with their intentions so that you can cross-refer the documentation that you have in your practice to make sure that it's, hitting the right targets at the right time. So that will be in the Facebook group under the Files tab, and I will put it up after the presentation today. So that's pre-engagement. Then we move into discovery. And at this point, we meet our client. They rock up in a supermarket queue, at a drinks party, outside the school gates, at a networking event. Maybe they phone you or they email you, but somehow we make a connection with this prospective client. Behind the scenes, we're on lead qualification and we're thinking, okay, does this sound feasible? Does it sound like this is actually a job for me? So we're starting to think actively about whether this is a fit. We then probably organize to have some form of discovery call with this client. And in the background, you possibly should have some kinds of notes for yourself or some kind of process that defines exactly what happens in a discovery call. Okay, we know very little about the client at this point. A discovery call is a chemistry check. We're seeing if we think we would want to work with this person. They're finding out more about us. We're finding out more about them. This is a client touch point. It's in the intent document. You can see what the purposes are in that document. And another thing I want to say, which I haven't raised yet, is this is actually the beginning of one of the processes of your business that really benefit where there are real savings for AI involvement. Now, I'm going to I'm going to identify those. I'm going to highlight them as we go. And I think I'm probably going to do another webinar, possibly also in July, specifically about how AI can help you with these processes. Okay, so I'm not going to get into that today, but there are particular points along the design process where AI is just brilliant at helping. So we're going to pull those out and we're going to look at those as well at a later date. So we're doing all of our standard discovery call process. We need to have that in the background, and we're having the discovery call with the client. And assuming that that has been successful, we've got a gate here, a go, no go decision. Obviously, for both parties, are we going ahead? If our decision is yes, we want to pursue this piece of work, then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to send the client our how we work document. Doesn't have to be called that, but that's the purpose that it serves. So if we look at our emotional chart and we see where the how we work is, it's, rising emotions, it's in a good place. And what is its purpose? Okay, so the how we work part, the emotional weather is cautious optimism, interested but perhaps not committed. And don't forget, we are in a two-system purchase. So interior design services, two systems need to approve interior design services: the heart and the head. Okay, so our how we work is dealing with both the heart and the head. It's making the client hungry to work with us because of our exquisite talent, but it's also reassuring them that we are seasoned professionals with a good track record and who can organize and produce things professionally. So the primary purpose, the primary intent of how we work is to inform the client. We're giving them information about our practice, about how we operate and who we are and who they'll be working with and all that kind of thing. And then our secondary intent is to manage their expectations, because we're about to have a meeting with them. We're going to have a preliminary meeting and they need to be prepared for that as well. And it's persuading. We are selling. So we're selling as part of this document. And I call the How We Work pack your court trumpeters. Okay. Now, a lot of you know, for many years, I was a director of KLC, and I used to regularly have to go in and introduce visiting guests, top designers, other practitioners coming in to speak to a group of students. And I can tell you two different scenarios. Scenario one, a week before the visit, I go into the classroom and I warn the students that this is about to happen. And I tell them why they are fortunate that they're about to meet this person and the relevance of this person and their experience and what they're going to tell them and what the student will benefit from and why this is a really exciting opportunity. So I do that a week in advance. This is what your How We Work document is doing ahead of the preliminary meeting. It's building up your authority bias. It's making the client feel fortunate to have you come to their home and give them an hour or two of your expertise. So How We Work is the court trumpeter. Now, in that scenario at KLC, a week later, I go into the classroom, I bring in the expert. The students are all present. They're all perky. They're paying attention. They've got notes ready to go, and they are excited and grateful to meet the expert. Sometimes we didn't do that. Sometimes the expert was just quietly ushered in the moment, and the students weren't as receptive. They weren't necessarily all there, and the ones who were there weren't necessarily bringing their A game. That was because the work wasn't done in advance. So How We Work, the very first pack, is carrying a lot of weight, and those are its purposes. So we are now, hopefully, having had the discovery call, sent the how we work document, we're moving into the preliminary meeting. Now, we can get into whether or not we charge for that. That's another matter. But in the background, we've got all of our preparation for the preliminary meeting. And again, and then we are producing notes and we're going to be making a fee proposal. So all of this is happening in the background around the preliminary meeting and after the preliminary meeting. Again, enormous, enormous benefits to using AI to help you with this. I am going to run a webinar on that subject. I've got a webinar next week for the BIID on AI. And I think out of that, I'm going to pull some of the stuff and we'll look at specifically systems and processes, how AI can help you. So I'm going to run that separately. Don't forget, we've done fee proposals before. The fee proposal stuff is on YouTube. So there's a webinar like this, all about fee proposals. And I also have a very inexpensive course on fee proposals and calculating fees on my website. So all of that information around fee proposals we've dealt with before. Then we get to presenting the fee proposal. Now, I'm coming back to this later in this same presentation because this is where I'm seeing a slight change. So we're going to put a pin in that and we're going to come back to it in 10 minutes or so. So we're putting together our fee proposal. AI can help us enormously, take a huge amount of the pressure off us. But we are going to produce something beautiful when we come to our fee proposal. So it's our second pack. It is not just a document. It is actually a sales pack in its own right. It is a moment of anxiety. It's a moment of conversion. This is a point at which a lot of jobs cease to exist. This is quite a significant pivot point in an interior design project. So the client is committing financially for the first time. Again, we mustn't forget it's a two-system purchase, selling to the head and to the heart. So we need to ensure that both aspects have been covered within the presentation. Now, we've spoken about this a lot in other webinars. I'm of the opinion that this should be presented to the client. So we make an appointment at the end of the preliminary meeting to come back and present the fee proposal. And I haven't yet seen, I think Sonia is not here today, but she may watch the recording. So credit to Sonia, who pointed out that she actually puts the big number on the front page of the fee proposal, so that the whole time that she's presenting the fee proposal, the client isn't in this this is a frozen state, just waiting to get to the back page and see the number. The number has been seen up front. Okay, so we get that over and done with. And then we do all of the bit that explains the value, what's going to be delivered, all the exciting stuff around it is the stuff that gets left most recently in the client's memory. So the key intent of the fee proposal is to anchor. It's a part of our contract. It's a legally binding document. It fixes the scope. It fixes the fee. It introduces the terms. Maybe it comes with separate terms and conditions or a contract. And it describes exactly how we will run our procurement model. I'm going to talk to you about procurement on another occasion, but explicitly describing and defining exactly how procurement is going to run is something that needs to appear several times during the client journey so that when we get to the point of procurement, everybody understands exactly the basis on which it's going to run and how much it's going to cost. So procurement is part of the fee proposal as well. So our primary function here, obviously, is anchoring. It's all about, getting the details down and having something to refer back to. But it is also a sales document. We are persuading the client to go with us. We have to win our client's trust. And we also have to communicate the value. So when the client sees the number and says, why on earth is it so expensive? The fee proposal should should answer that question. It should contain the information that explains what they're actually going to get for their money. And it manages expectations because it sets deliverables and possibly gives an indication of timelines. So a very important document. Now, there's a trough here. It's landing at a difficult point because it's probably going to be a bigger number than the client expects. But hopefully, a lot of your pre-information has done the job of managing those expectations. Ideally, by the time we get to fee proposal, we've managed to diffuse the worst of the sticker shock, but it is a pivotal point. And then at the end of feasibility and appointment, we get to the letter of appointment or the letter of engagement. Perhaps there's a little bit of negotiation, and then the letter of engagement is the letter that is going to finalize and fix all of the terms of the arrangement that we've come to with the client before we move on and we begin the actual design process. So the client says yes. They sign the letter of engagement. They are now formally a client of our business, and we're into the prep and briefing stage of the design process. We have got briefing notes, briefing checklists, briefing questionnaires, all going on in the background. This is really complex. There's a great deal to it. I am going to pluck this out as part of the how AI can help you with your systems and processes. And we'll have a look at that in greater detail, probably in a few weeks' time. So let's leave that be for now. But we are going to engage in a series, one or more, briefing meetings with the client, making sure at this point that we really understand what we want and that we are about to embark on the design process itself with the best possible collection of data and understanding of the client before we go. Sorry, we seem to have jumped ahead there. Oh, yes. So, sorry. The client, okay, so the client has said yes. We are now going to send them another large set piece document. We are going to send them the onboarding pack. And again, hopefully everybody's feeling buoyant. We're optimistic. The mood is rising. The purpose of this document is to manage our client relationship. So the client has signed. They need to feel like they've made a really good decision. We're informing the client. So perhaps now we get a bit more gritty about exactly how we're going to work, exactly how they need to behave and perform, and the boundaries around our business. So we've got two packs, both going out, not that far apart. We had the how we work, which was more promotional, more informational, and now we're onboarding. We're making sure that we kick off the project in the best, with the best model of a client designer relationship to serve the job, in the best way possible. So we're managing the relationship, we're informing the client, and we're managing their expectations. The how we work was more of a sales document. It was broader strokes. Now we are getting into the detail with the onboarding pack. And we can see it's at a generally good period. Everybody's excited. So that's where it falls in the arc. Sorry, I jumped ahead of myself earlier. Then we get into the brief taking meetings. Everything I said, AI helps you here. And we have our systems for taking the brief. Okay, so, and we did a bit of chatting about taking the brief in the selling, the couple of webinars that I ran, I think last year, on selling to high net worth clients. So there was some talk about taking the brief through those two webinars. And ultimately, the client is going to sign off on the briefing. So we're going to produce a final version of the briefing document that is going to go on the record as being the final agreed intentions of this joint project with the designer and the client, and exactly what good is going to look like, what is going to be required in order to meet the client's aspirations for the project. So then we get into the next phase, which is concept design. And of course, we go into a period of proper designing. We're now into the actual design process itself. We get into a design channel with the client. We have the meetings needed with the client to get to a developed concept for the project. Now, I'm KLC through and through, decades. And I know there are a lot of people here who are. And I know at KLC, when we talked about concept, it was a sheet of paper that had a few images on it, and there wasn't a great deal to it. Many working designers, when they talk about the concept stage, they get to a much greater degree of completion by the end of the concept stage. By the end of the concept stage, we know the kinds of shapes, the style, the colors, the materials. Apart from making the final selection, we've pretty much got to quite a considered view of what the ultimate design direction for the project is going to be. So this sets the design direction, and we're having multiple meetings with the clients, and in the background we're maybe starting to put together things like scheme sheets, maybe a bit early, maybe that comes more with a developed design, but we're starting to get materials together and we're building our concept packs. We're also starting to begin to consider what the likely cost to the client is going to be for this project. We can't pin it down definitively, because until we actually get into the next stage and we develop the design, we don't know which sofa we're having, we don't know which table we're having. We haven't actually sourced and specified the product, but we do know the ballpark, and we've done it before, and we know roughly how much these things cost. We can begin to put together an indicative cost for the client of how much this project is going to cost them, what their investment is going to be. So we have the meetings and we do the client concept presentation. And again, now we have an important pack. It is a major positive peak. Of course, there are emotional stakes. The client has been part of the development of the concept. You haven't rustled this up out of the blue. Hopefully, they've had some input. It is a selling moment. So the primary intent of this pack is to persuade, win emotional commitment to the design direction. And we're starting to think too about managing change. So if you read the blog post about change management, you will know that starting now, to prepare the client for the change that is going to happen in their home and how that might affect them, and what psychology teaches us about why we experience those effects and what it's going to feel like and how long before we adjust and all that kind of stuff, can be part of the conversations that we start having with our clients, so that they don't panic when they actually see the finished scheme and it's different from the way they've been living in the past. So we're guiding the client from their private vision to something that is more designed, and we're helping them manage their decision-making process. So we structure this reveal in order to produce a clear yes. That might mean having a couple of alternatives hidden under the table that you can pull out with a flourish, to make an adjustment in order to get a yes in the moment and not to have to go back to the drawing board at the next stage. So concept, hopefully, is a high point. Next up, we're going to get to money. And of course, once we get to the indicative budget, perhaps that is starting to feel a little bit more uncomfortable for the client. Perhaps it's starting to roll into territory where they weren't expecting to go. So we have an indicative budget that we're going to present to the client. We are still at a relative high, but financial sobriety must follow emotional high without extinguishing it. So we're trying to manage these two elements running pretty much concurrently. We're preparing the ground. Okay, so next we're going to go and develop the design. We're going to develop the design for real. And at that point, we are going to start sourcing, we are going to start specifying, and we are going to have real live prices. We don't want to have to come back between this meeting and actually presenting the final budget with a massive disparity. Okay, we want to be getting close to what is going to be the financial outlay for the project as we begin this indicative budget. So we're managing expectations by preparing the ground for the stage 4 investment that's going to come, ideally looking to prevent shock later. We're informing the client and educating them on what drives project costs. So perhaps there's a bit of naivety that is, or a lack of awareness that needs to be corrected at this point, and we are showing our experience, our knowledge by presenting this very clearly to the client as part of this indicative budget. And it could be at this point that we need to manage some change with the client because perhaps they need to recalibrate their ambition. So this can be a very delicate moment. But hopefully from this possible low, we're going to forge on and we're going to start developing the design. Now, I'm coming back in the next webinar to pick up the baton at this point, halfway through, and we'll look at the rest of the design process from then on. But I wanted to go back to something that I mentioned earlier, which is something that I'm seeing a bit more of in the conversations that I have with designers. And it's quite a substantial fork in the road that comes at the point of proposing the fee. So I wanted to raise awareness around this in case it's helpful for anybody at the moment. Now, my fee proposal course or fee calculation course assumes the following, and this is what I call approach number 1. So this is what I have taught in the past. We go through discovery, we go through feasibility, we have the preliminary meeting. At the end of the preliminary meeting, we're in a position to produce the fee proposal. So what do we do? Okay, this is one way of doing it. This is not the only way of doing it. The way I would normally deal with it would be either in 1 or 2 stages, create a fixed fee for preparation, concept, develop design, and technical design would all come in under some form of fixed fee. I might be charging on an hourly rate for things like site visits and for overseeing us, elements of procurement and so on. And then procurement, I would be talking about either acting as agent or principal with a handling charge or selling at retail. And I would be back at feasibility. I would be producing all of this for the client and sitting down with them at the fee proposal presentation and presenting the rest of their life with me. Okay, so I'd be telling them about how the rest of their life with my business was going to run. I'm seeing a reasonable number of people take a different approach. The different approach is, yes, we do discovery, we do feasibility, the fee proposal is produced, and at that point, at the fee proposal meeting, the designer presents a fee. I'm saying a fixed fee, doesn't have to be a fixed fee, that's just my preference, to get us through preparation and through concept. And as I was just saying, at the end of concept, we're really quite evolved. We haven't specified, we haven't really done much sourcing. We might have been looking at materials and finishes. Maybe we've got an idea of what's available on the market, but we haven't begun to pin down the design. We are just at the point where the design direction for the project is about to be captured and fixed. So our design fee is for this piece of work. The designer indicates how they work for the rest of the project, what kinds of fees they might charge. Maybe they give a rough indication per room or, based on prior experience, roughly how much these things tend to cost. But the fee that is being actually presented is just for prep and concept. So what they do is they get to feasibility, they produce fee proposal one, it covers prep and concept, and once they are at design direction set, then they produce a second fee proposal. And the second fee proposal covers the rest of the process. It covers everything that remains. Now, the reason that I'm raising this with you now is I know the market is difficult. Now, I am hearing two very different tales. I've got clients whose marketing is well established, whose websites are powerhouses, and they continue to attract clients and business is going well. For clients of mine whose marketing is perhaps a bit newer or who don't have the power in their website, maybe it's not something that they've historically focused on, or perhaps it's relatively new, the market is feeling quite thin. And it has appeared to be quite a successful approach to deliver a fee proposal that only deals with a smaller part of the process because the number is lower. And the client, ill-advisedly, will often think, oh, well, I can get to design direction, and then I'll have enough to do it myself, they think. And the lovely thing about working with the client through prep and concept is that very often by the end of concept, the client thinks, God, did I really think I could manage without the designer? I have to continue. So we're much more down the line with the client. We're much more, engaged with them. It becomes an easier sell to do the rest of the bundle. So I'm just putting that to you because I'm seeing it work reasonably well. If you want to try a different approach, or if things seem tricky at the moment, it might be something that it's worth trying. Now, sorry, time check. I did also want to make you aware of a new program that I'm about to launch. I'm going to be launching it in September, and it is called White Label Studio. And it is everything that you need for your systems and processes. So all of the stuff above the line, all of the stuff below the line is all contained in the course. The course is delivered by stage of the design process. It includes video content telling you how to run that stage, and it includes all of the branded for you, ready for you to brand, design packs, those 9 design packs ready for the client, plus all of the other documentation that you need to run your business behind the scenes is all downloadable from this course. So it is meant to be basically everything that you could need in order to run your systems and processes. I am not a lawyer. I am not an accountant. You still need all of your legal representation. You still need to get your paperwork checked, and you still need your accountant. This is about systems and processes for interior design. So there are 2 ways to access this. I am currently running a pre-launch special offer on the White Label Studio, and it is going to be until the end of this month. You can buy the pre-launch commitment for £350, and it would normally be £500. So that is the offer until the end of June. Alternatively, I know there are some people here who are considering joining me in September for the 12-week course that I run, Business in a Box. That is for new designers. And anybody who comes on Business in a Box, and I can see some of last year's Business in a Box people are here, you are all going to get this anyway. Okay, it's part of Business in a Box. So last year's group, I'm going to give it to you. And anyone signing up now for the only 12 seats on this course, you're going to get White Label Studio as part of Business in a Box. So that's what is going to be available. So I would now like to stop sharing. I'm sorry, I do think I advertised that this was going to be quite a long session today. So we are nearly at the hour. But questions, any questions? Anyone want to chat about anything that we've been discussing?
Hi, Julia, it's Janet. Um, Hi. Just a question really with regard to how we work and fee proposals being separate or not. So, what I'm experiencing now, and it may be I'm fishing in the wrong pool, but people are primarily interested in the cost of the service. So, I have a three-tier service which basically says how I work and what you actually get for each of those services. The third service is full renovation, so I don't put a cost on that because that's not possible. But that so I have a let's say I have a discovery call. The discovery call. This has happened three times in the last month. A contact, very good discovery call, feel a real connection, good chemistry, and I then send a PDF of my services, which is basically how I work and the fees associated, which I always say are indicative and every job is different. So therefore, this sort of gives people a broad view as to what my costs are. And I've done that, had very good conversations, sent a personal, persuasive email along with the services and fees, and all three of them have not come back to me. And I can only assume it's the fact that I'm putting my fee in with the effectively how I work and the services I offer.
Yeah. Um, so when I think about a how we work document, I'm thinking about a beautiful brochure,
Yeah,
effectively.
yeah,
Um, so it's really difficult, Janet. So there's questions about, were those clients ever in the market to pay for design services? I mean, were they?
exactly.
Do you,
Yeah.
do you know if they were?
Well, the conversation suggested that they were, but I, you know, I do find that even with conversation with clients, they kind of go, so I get to a concept, but I don't really know what I'm delivering, but it's going to cost me money to do that, is it? So, well,
Yeah,
yes, because it's time and it's deliverables, isn't it? So it's just interesting to see whether actually it would be better to separate the persuasive sell and how I work together with my client and then follow up with fees. And these are not big projects. These are small projects.
yeah.
So the fee isn't, it's not, I wouldn't have said was, an extreme fee that they were
And
looking
I,
at.
I mean, I know the answer to this question, but your services are designed to hit the pain points of those very particular type of people who are
Yeah, yeah,
presenting themselves.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, I mean, it just sounds like price sensitivity. I mean, when you know on when I'm talking to startup designers, and I know you've been going a bit long, a bit longer than that,
Mm,
but talking to startup designers, we often talk about having like a jetpack set of services that are cheap and dirty to
mm,
get you off the ground, to get things moving.
mm.
And they tend to be, they're not lost leaders, but they are just designed to get the engine started. And
Yeah, absolutely. And I get
um,
that. It was just looking at the steps in terms of what you've presented, how we work pack goes first and then fee follows. So I'm just wondering, and indeed anybody else on the forum now, if they've experienced a better conversion as a result of. But speaking in the context of Sonia, Sonia's saying she doesn't mess about. She goes, that's the fee. And because ultimately that is what people want to know.
But Sonia has been, well, I don't want to speak about Sonia, she's not here at the moment,
No.
but so the alternative approach is to pitch where you should be in the market at grown-up clients who
Mm,
have a budget and just accept that your business needs to, and I know it's cart before horse and all that kind of thing, but if maybe you're presenting that lower end and therefore you're failing to get the people at the mid-range because they're seeing the offering at the lower end. I'm not sure, but systems and processes, I do think you would have your discovery call. Then the role of the how we work document is to really get them excited before the preliminary meeting.
Mm.
So it's to build you up as a
Yeah.
real fabulous expert before the preliminary meeting. Then you have the preliminary meeting, you pitch, you give the fee proposal, um, and then oh, so I'm getting my onboardings mixed up here. Um, I'm so sorry, Janet. Does anyone have any
It's
comments?
worth a
Does anyone,
try. It's worth me
Claire,
just trying different
Claire,
methodology. It
what?
definitely is. Yeah.
No, I was only going to say, like in response to Janet, as a consumer, I personally would always rather just know the price up front. And one thing I get really frustrated about as a consumer, like looking for a photographer to photograph my projects, there are no prices on anyone's websites. And it drives me mad because I'm like, I'm going to contact someone, they might come back and say £1,000 an hour. And I'm like, Christ, I mean, that's well out of my price range. But
Mm.
they might also come back and it takes up my time to do that admin as a consumer. So
Mm.
I would personally, I mean, this is just my preference. I would always want to know up front. But
Mm.
what I would also want to know is if I was sent, if I'm sent a document, I want my experience in my sales days. So, when I was um when I'm working as a consultant, I have to sell it, and you have to sell it by breaking it down, I find. I mean, as in, and I'm sure you already do that. I don't know what your documents look like or anybody's do, but personally, people want to know what the value is, I suppose, don't
Yeah,
they?
do. Yeah, and I've
Uh,
worked really hard to actually specify the how I work and actually what the deliverables are. So what you actually get
yeah.
for that amount of money. Um, and I've really tried to be exactly as you say, really explicit, so that people are not thinking, well, that's fine, but is it 500 or is it 5,000? I've tried to be very open with that. And maybe Julia's right. Maybe I'm fishing in the wrong pool, and so therefore, people are thinking, well, actually, I don't want to pay for that.
I think there's a lot of value as well. Sorry, Julia. I don't know if I'm stepping on toes, but I think there's a lot of values as well in like delivering something face to face, or having the conversation or having a cup of tea, or because
Mm.
obviously part of it is yourself. You're selling yourself. So
Yeah,
maybe that might help just me in my sort of previous sales role is that just
yeah,
the delivery
yeah.
is that. But
It's better. Yeah, and
but yeah, but
I think
as a
you're
consumer,
right.
personally as a consumer, I would want to know the price up front. But
Mm.
that's just my opinion.
Mm. Mhm. Thank
I'm
you.
sorry, Janet. It's a much longer conversation, I
It is.
think.
Yeah, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And I certainly don't want to ambush the session.
No, no, not at all. But I just want to make sure that we get some other Q&A if anybody has any.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yes.
Hello. I have a query about the definition of brief taking because just going back to uh, the the timing. So at the delivery of the fee proposal pack, um, we haven't actually fully defined the brief.
No,
So
no.
I'm wondering how that, could you just explain a bit
Yeah.
more about
So,
how that?
yeah. So you have had quite a considerable meeting with the client. So you would have had the preliminary meeting, and personally, I would allow the amount of time for that preliminary meeting that I would need in order to produce a fee proposal. So that preliminary meeting could be, I don't know, 2 hours spent with the client. Your fee proposal could be subject to change. If the brief was to indicate, taking the brief process was to indicate a substantially different approach to the one that you had pitched for, I dare say you could leave some room there to discuss the budget, the fee proposal, but I've always found that the actual taking the brief is really considerable, and it involves, if you're working on a large project, it involves several hours spent talking with the client and looking at things and so on. And it's not an amount of work that I would want to get into if the client hadn't committed to working with me. It's too big a job to my mind to be on the wrong side of that fee proposal gate. So I would be looking to have a preliminary meeting with the client that was at least an hour to 2 hours long, and that was going to generate enough information to produce a fee proposal that, with my experience, I felt I could stand behind for the project that was described. I completely take your point, and I know you could do it the other way round. It's just that fee proposal, that the brief taking, along with producing the notes from the brief taking, is so much work that it's starting to get prohibitively expensive to put it that side of the fee proposal.
So that makes a great deal of sense. I'm finding myself, in that position. So I'm really interested to see that there's a way of, I guess you're saying, yeah, the initial brief you take is more broad stroke, and your fee proposal needs to allow for, as you say, for amendments and. But yeah, I think yeah, thank you. That clarifies it, because yeah, I was thinking to take the full brief, which I, on certain projects have been doing, so that is then tied into what people are agreeing to. Yeah, it does take up a huge amount of time. So
Yeah.
this is really interesting.
It's also it's an argument for the alternative fee proposal model that I spoke about in the second part of the presentation, where actually the main fee for the project, the bulk of the fee for the project isn't calculated officially until we get to the end of the concept design stage.
Yeah, yeah.
So, you can embark on concept design in a fairly fluid and flexible way, because you're not hemmed into a fee proposal that extends to, out to the farthest reaches. And so that is another reason why I know the designers who work that way recommend working in that way. But yes, normally at the preliminary meeting, I can glean, I know the scope, I get a good sense of the client, I can tell whether the client is decisive and, how lengthy our meetings are going to be. I get a good idea of the scale of the project and exactly what's going to be involved. I've always felt very comfortable about producing a fee proposal based on the preliminary meeting, and I would not want to give away all of that briefing meeting stuff ahead of producing the fee proposal thing.
Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Any other questions?
Hi, Julia.
Yes, Claudia.
Thank you so much for this incredible amount of work that you've shared with us. It's so fascinating. And you must have put a lot of work into the documents that you're proposing now. And I wonder, obviously you can't share with us, what they look like. That would be pointless, but because you're selling them, but just to get an idea of how generic versus how much we want to then tailor them, because obviously what each of us does and offers and how we present ourselves is going to be different, and that is part of the how we work and why choose us and all the other documents. So I wonder if they just generally speaking, if they're laid out in a way that we can easily tweak them and add our own flavor.
Yeah, they're currently under production, Claudia, which is they're not due to launch until September. And certainly I anticipate that later in the development stage, I'll be able to give more in the way of examples. So you can actually see what it is you're going to get.
But to make use of the offer, we'd commit now.
Yes, but to make use of the offer, you commit now. Exactly. Yes, sorry, you're in a bind there. I understand.
I mean, knowing you, I'm sure that will be great. It'd just be good to know a little bit
no,
more.
I completely understand.
Maybe there's a way of telling us something, not right now, but maybe before the next call, because we've still got until the end of the month.
Yes.
It's just because I'm very interested.
Yes.
But I'm also curious how I then tweak it, make it personal, other than just sticking a logo on the page. Otherwise you have lots of people sending out the same document just with different logos on it.
I would say, particularly with the 9 packs that are the real sort of headline packs that get sent to the client, the point of them is that they've been co-designed not to overlap with each other and to serve just the right purpose at the right point. So they have, I think I've got a matrix of, like, I don't know, 57 different pages that could appear in any one of those documents. And then I've said that page appears in that document and that document, and it's all sort of broken down to make complete sense for the purpose that the document needs. I'm sorry, I will find a way of communicating it. I will find a way, Claudia. I will find a way of working.
The other thing I'd love to know, is it based on using which program do we need to be using?
So,
like, is it Canva? Is it PowerPoint? Is it, what's it based on?
The client-facing stuff comes 3 ways. Each one comes in, and they're all identical, either InDesign, Canva, or PowerPoint. So each document has 3 versions in each of those different systems. The behind the scenes one tend to be more simple, and they will be in Microsoft Office. So they'll be in either Word or Excel. So yeah, those are the systems that are being used.
One question for me, Julia,
Yes,
as well, and it's actually, it leads from Claudia very much so, is that I'm a lighting designer and I work in residential, so I'm not quite the interior designer, so I don't need maybe exactly everything that the others are choosing. There are things which are a little bit similar, because sometimes I don't work with an interior designer and I work straight on myself and the architect. But the brief has to be maybe not to the level that the others are. It has to relate to only my lighting part of it. But I do need to know the furniture layout. I do need to know a few things that usually the interior designer or the architect will take on board. So knowing that if these packs could be, again, tweakable, so that I could actually adjust them to me, maybe with your help on a one-to-one or something like that, to make it really, really specific to me, would actually be fantastic, so that I know if ever I can use them.
Yes. Well, they would each be. So you would have basically so for example, I probably don't want to bore people too much with the details of all of this, but with the InDesign pack, there's a sort of branding area where you put in your logo, your colors, your fonts, and then the entire document changes to represent your business brand. But within those documents, you can adjust the pages, you can adjust, which pages are included, you can adjust the content on the pages. However, at the point that you were doing that, you might start to change the appearance of the document because you've taken away a paragraph or you've taken away an image or something, and it starts to lose its integrity. So I think we should talk about that separately. They are tweakable, but the whole point of them is that they should look beautiful. And once you start messing around, you can change the copy, you can change the words, but once you start messing with the design, then you're sort of getting into, redesigning
shakeable areas. That's why I wanted to know, what. Anyway, I'll have a conversation with you.
Cool. Okay. Any other questions?
Hi, Julia.
Yes, Louise. Hi.
Hello. Thank you for having me here. I'm delighted to be here. New kid on the block.
Welcome.
So an area that I find quite tricky and broad is the concept development. area. And I just wondered, is there any webinars or anything I might have missed that kind of goes into detail on what you should be including, what you shouldn't be including?
No, I have never done that. But I've been thinking, I'm sorry, this is no use to you whatsoever, but I have been thinking that for next year, for Hothouse, what I'd really like to do is actually look at design and start thinking about what's the concept, what's the technical, actually doing the design side. So that is next year, but no, I have never done that.
That's okay. I'm going to book a one-to-one with you anyway.
Okay,
to drill
great.
down into some of my pain points.
Yeah, no problem. We can definitely talk about that, and it's definitely coming. But I haven't done it yet.
No problems. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? No? Okay. Well, I think I've probably detained you all long enough. So part 2 is coming next week on Wednesday, the 24th of June, again at 10 a.m. We'll be picking up I'll do a very brief recap of intent, and then we're going to pick up in the middle of the process, and we're going to look at the back end of the process. And then separately, I am going to do a session on procurement, which is going to take procurement all the way through the entirety of procurement. That's going to be deep and technical. And then I want to do a separate session on AI and systems and processes, and exactly how you can use AI and where you can use AI with systems and processes to massively improve your experience and to speed things up and make you more effective, more efficient, and more professional. So I'm going to do that separately, and those 2 sessions will probably run early in the first half of July. Yes, Claudia, did you have a question?
One more thing about the AI that you mentioned. You're doing one with BIID again.
Yes, next week
what
today.
are you covering? Can you say what is are you covering something different? Has your sort of presentation evolved as this is constantly moving?
Yeah, it's going to be brand new, and it's the advanced. So BIID have me do beginners and sort of intermediate. Next week is intermediate. And specifically, next week, I'm going to be looking at what I'm talking about here, which is how you can use projects in AI systems to speed up things like production of fee proposals, fee proposal, briefing notes, all the big heavy stuff that goes on in the background of an interior design practice. So we're going to be looking at heavy lifting of systems and processes through projects in AI next week.
Okay. Is there still space on it?
I don't think so.
Really?
I think it's on a wait list. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Could you, they always get sold out. I've missed it again now because
I was on the wait list. And I did the first one with Julia. Actually, it was released, a space was released just the day before. But I have the name of somebody that I think was moderating the first one, her email, and possibly you can just email her and she might be able to open up a space or let you know if ever. Just WhatsApp me if you want.
Okay, that's great. That cuts Virginie. I was going to say maybe, Julia, you could run this. You could offer just a paid version. Just all the other people, because I keep missing out on this. I'm always too late.
Actually, Claudia, the thing I'm talking about here is going to be quite similar to the thing that I'm going to do for the BIID. So the extracting the systems and processes that would best benefit from AI assistance and then showing you how to do it is something I'm going to do in July here.
Okay. All right then. I can survive that I missed out.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Excellent. Well, lovely to see you all. Thank you all for coming along, and I'm going to put this recording up on YouTube, and I'll put and there is a document, a 30-line document of all the client touch points that I've identified, that show what the intent of each touch point should be. And I'm going to give me a moment, but that today I'm going to put that up under the Files tab in the Hothouse group, so you'll have that as an Excel spreadsheet to download. And lovely to see you all. Thank you for coming. Take care. Bye.